'Cause I am searching, don't need to look outside myself to know that I am whole. And I've been learning, made it through the darkest storms, and I'm coming to my own. And I am worthy of love. I can learn to love myself just because.
Welcome, friends. Happy Monday. Welcome. How's it going? Hey, beauty. How's it going, Dinah?
It's so good. How are you, Emma?
It's good. I'm not gonna lie. I feel a little bit weird being here in my studio without you.
I know.
It feels kind of weird, but I also respect it because it's been, it's a long weekend, President's Day weekend, and obviously it was Valentine's Day weekend. So happy Valentine's Day. How are you doing? How was your celebration?
Celebration was good. Tomorrow is Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year, so we're kind of preparing for that at home. So it's been a good weekend.
Yes, I'm excited. I'm excited for today's conversation.
Me too.
This person I have known for a long time. I'm using the term known very broadly because I've known him since I was 19, so a couple of years, but we haven't been in like direct contact for a long time. So I'm really excited about the catching up on all of his antics for the past decade and a half. But also, I'm excited that this is going to be, I think, the first real other New Zealand accent you will have heard on this podcast.
I love it. I know. We were listening to him backstage, and I'm like, I can just listen to you guys talk all day.
It's the weirdest thing for us because, for New Zealanders, our accent's just kind of meh, but that's okay. We're here to celebrate the diversity of the New Zealand accent amongst all other accents. But that's not actually what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things when it comes to therapy, when it comes to psychology, when it comes to, I don't know, the plethora of experience that this man brings to the table. Dr. Dave, how's it going?
G'day.
G'day.
There he is.
How you doing? How was your Valentine's Day weekend?
Yeah, it was alright. I actually went to see my parents. There was actually it was quite a sad Valentine's Day, to be honest. I went to a funeral. But it was good seeing my parents, and it was for an old school friend's dad. So a lot of catching up with people I knew from primary school, which was very, very weird. Like my friend when I was 10 years old, which was over 30 years ago. So a sad reason to be there, but those sorts of events do kind of bring people together.
No, I totally agree. My mother passed away a month ago now. And, same thing, going back to New Zealand and catching up with people that you haven't seen for years. I'm sorry to hear about your friend's father.
And same for you as well. Like, I knew your mum, obviously. So, it was very sad to hear that.
It's a weird, I've been telling everybody, like when we start off in a lull, the only direction we can go is up, so that's what I'm kind of holding on to for the rest of 2026. But yeah, anyways, so tell us about you. Like for those who have no idea, you've been through a bit of a change and shift over your career. You started off as the Dr. Bogan, Burton C. Bogan back in the day, and you've kind of evolved into doing a number of wild and wonderful things to help the world become a better place. Where are you at now with your work as a psychologist and counselor?
I'm like a very weird Pokemon. At the moment I work as a lived experience mental health and addictions advisor. So that means I draw upon my own health experiences to try and get patient and client what we say in Māori as tangata whaora, so a person seeking wellness. So trying to get their voices heard wherever it's needed, and it's needed everywhere. So I have a fantastic job where I train nurses around how to work with people. I'm involved in research. I give talks. I design services. So we've had a national rollout of the service that I helped implement, and find feedback mechanisms for our existing services. So I get to do lots of everything. So I have like my doctorate in psych, and I've just finished training as a counsellor, but I'm not registered yet. Studying full time and doing placements last year, and still doing my advisor stuff last year. I'm just happy working one job at the moment until the dust settles. And yeah, as we were talking about before we started, like backstage, but I used to work in a prison. I used to do some teaching at a tertiary level. There was all the stuff with the Bogan research. So yeah, I'm kind of a human pinball machine. I just kind of bounce around and things happen and I get involved, and it's it's been fantastic.
I love that. I know you have a question, Dinah, but before we do that, can you just expand for the Americans listening on what exactly a Bogan is? Because I've tried to describe, I still consider myself a Bogan in many ways here in the States, even as a woman of color who makes music that is very not metal. But can you just give our listeners an overview of what the term Bogan actually means from the Dr. Bogans himself?
So long story short, I always viewed it as like a working class heavy metal fan. So usually dressing in black jeans, band t-shirt, steel cap boots, that kind of thing. So the going to concerts, they're having a beer with your mates, the barbecue out the back. So it's very kind of Kiwi culture in general, but it's just that you throw heavy metal in there and make us far too easygoing. And rough around the edges, and that's kind of it in a nutshell, really. So it's usually sort of thrash metal, that kind of classic metal and thrash metal, a little bit of death stuff. So it's it's your Judas Priest, your Black Sabbath, your Metallica, your AC/DC, your Pantera. It's all those kinds of bands are quite core to the I shouldn't use the word core because that adds another musical element, but that's kind of the base of it in terms of music. So there's a similar term in Australia, but that's more that the American equivalent of that would be like white trash, but in New Zealand it's much more associated with a type of music than Australia is. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. 4 years summed up in one. Yeah, so my thesis was wasn't specifically like studying Bogans. It was more like I was interested in identity theory and how people come to be who they are and how they share that with other people to develop friendships and communities. But I used Bogans as like a case study because that was my community. Well, still is my kind of community, and it was quite obvious. Like, too often I feel psychology, we focus too much about what's inside. So we talk about beliefs and attitudes and perceptions and all this sort of stuff. Whereas to me, a lot of identity, and not just me, theorists out there as well, identity is also in how you dress and who you hang out with and how you talk and how you decorate your house and all that stuff. So the internal stuff is still important, but I was more interested in that external stuff. Because often when we do talk about who we are, we talk about ourselves in relation to others. So, I was more interested in that. And so heavy metal and Boganism was quite an obvious example of that because it's intentionally in your face. It's, you can't help but recognize the music shirts. And even if you don't know the bands, you still recognize the black shirt with the slogan on it. So yeah, it was quite a visual and obvious kind of example where I could talk through some of these more complex theories in an easy to understand kind of way, which was something I was quite keen on because I get a bit tired of long academic words, even though I know what they mean. I'd rather say more with simpler words than use a whole bunch of big words and use up my time. So wanted it to be accessible.
That's cool.
Well, as you're talking about that identity and belonging, why do you think that belonging and that identity, why is it so important to people? And what happens when we don't feel like we belong, like with the Alice in Chains and the, the Black Sabbath t-shirt, stuff like that? Yeah.
We all belong.
I think Alice in Chains might be one of those unifying bands. Yeah,
That's what
I mean,
chose them.
identity is in everything we do. It's in absolutely everything we do. You talk about, and I use I should say identities, because obviously we're not just the one thing.
Mhm.
Academic, Bogan, uncle, or all that stuff has different ways of acting, different ways of talking. So we're not just identity, we're identities as well. And that plays a part if you think about all the decisions that you've made in your life, all the ways that the people you hang out, the jobs you've taken, your hobbies, or this podcast, all that stuff, that's all wrapped up in who you are. It's all about who you've interacted with. And our identities, I believe, and others believe, is made up of this accumulation of experiences and how we've interpreted those experiences. So because of that, your very experience is tied very closely into who you are and how you filter the information that you receive, all the discourses that you draw from and all that sort of thing. That's all very much tied up in identity and experiences. And I think that for those that can become unwell, there is a sense of disconnect. Take addictions, for example. People talk about the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. And so that can play a part. So, a lot of these kinds of issues that come into people's lives through no fault of their own, they can disconnect us from the people around us. They can lead to experiences that are not ones that we would choose. And that can have that roll-on effect. And often, when it comes to those who are unwell or facing particular issues, just feeling like you're not alone can be really useful. We're very social beings, even people who say they're not. There's still things that they draw on and experience that involve other people, even if it's not a direct face-to-face kind of thing. So, that's where our strength is. So there's a lot of things that are tied up into why it's so important.
Yeah. I love your points about community and about identity and about not being alone, right? And really focusing on that wholer community to how we, I don't know, the way that I interpret it is when we find ourselves in certain situations, when we are deciding on what we want to do when our back's up against the wall or whatever, especially when it comes to battling with our inner demons or, battling with any kind of addictive behaviors. It's almost like our community can make or break us, and our ability to decide who we want to become can also feed into that. Do you have any kind of insights or, methodologies that you use to help people understand the decision they have when it comes to, and the power that they have when it comes to deciding their identities in their communities? Or how does that play out in the work that you do?
Well, I was trained as a narrative therapist. So narrative therapy talks about the discourses or the discourses, the stories, the narratives that are out there in the world, and how we draw upon them or reject them to sort of guide our actions and sort of interact with others, I guess. What can I say? Trying to gain an understanding of some of those stories out there in the world that are kind of having an influence or an impact on the person's life can be quite, can help in terms of that power stuff. So it's like, I find myself having arguments with someone at work, and then you kind of start exploring these things of, say, patriarchy that may come into it, or the organizational story, or how your values may not work with, what you value may not be valued with where you are. So by sometimes understanding and unpacking those, that can help lessen the effects of it. So if you have a better understanding about, so for instance, I have Crohn's disease, so there's lots of things around disability that can have an impact on terms of my own mental health and my experience of the world. So having a bit more of an understanding of disability and prejudice and stigma and all that sort of thing can help me sort of feel like I'm pushing back on these things. And then you can sort of make decisions about, well, okay, am I happy with this effect that this is having on me? Okay, no, I'm not. Okay, well, how do I push back against that? Or how do I found that I've got these skills that help me push back. How do we strengthen that story? All that kind of stuff. So narrative has a lot to say about that. And sometimes it's just, you can connect with others by finding other stories that are more important to you.
Mm.
So it becomes less about my disability, but more about my love for my family and things like that. Mm. And those, you can find those things that keep you going and reconnected and things like that. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not explaining that terribly well, but that's we got like half an hour to quite conscious of that. And I could talk on about a lot of the, all the stuff I'm involved in. I could talk for days about it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about, do you have any insight from your work that everyday people can use to better understand themselves or the people that are, important in their life?
I think sometimes just talking about, if we're talking about, say, a connection with a person and recognizing the importance, just exploring what it is about that person, what is the connection. People share, I can't share anything from the therapy room, obviously, but people talk about how they met someone or an activity that they enjoy with someone close to them, like a brother or something like that. And then by exploring the story about what did you do and where did you go and what did that mean for you when they said that, and what was important about going fishing with your dad that brought it to mind now, or is there an image that kind of comes to mind when you think of your wife or your son or whoever? So I think a lot of it is talking and looking at some of those words people use and explaining the story. So being able to share that with others, I mean, I don't even think it necessarily needs to be a therapist, but just talking through some of these things about, what did this person mean to you? And it could be someone that's still with you. It might be someone who's passed. Sometimes talking about your connection to an object, which is a big part of my thesis as well. And with the placement work I did, I went to people's homes as well. I gave them the option if that was working for them. So, I did counselling sessions in retirement homes and trailer parks, people's house, at the cafe, and that gives you lots of opportunities because there are family photos, there are items that are important to the person, and you can kind of have a conversation about that. Oh, why? I noticed there's a big photo of your dad on the wall. I'm getting the sense that he's really important in your life, and then you kind of talk about it. So being nosy really helps. I get really, to relate it back to the heavy metal stuff, it's like, viewing someone's record collection or, that's a great movie. And that's how I sort of connect with people that I'm talking about in my work, both counselling and the advisory stuff, is finding that, how do we connect? Māori have, the Indigenous people in New Zealand have like a pepea in terms of how it's how you introduce yourself. So you talk about your mountain, your river, your whānau, where you come from, what iwi, what tribe you're from, those sorts of things. And by putting it out there in the world, when you meet someone, it's giving other people the opportunity to pick up on that too. So sometimes I think if we're looking at insights and stuff like that, sometimes putting yourself out there a little bit in terms of what you're into, and I'm always doing that with people and work colleagues and things like that. And I'm always asking about their dog, their cat, talking about what I'm into. This is pretty much what I wear to work. So, I love American football, so I put that out there as well. Video games, so I talk a lot about a range of different things and drop little bits of who I am into my work with people so that they can pick that up and feel connected. And usually nature is is the easiest one because everyone has some sort of connection to a river or a forest or an animal, or lots of people have pets in New Zealand. It's probably the same everywhere. People can quite happily talk about their pets, and you can build those connections. I did a focus group once for work, and I was wearing a Star Wars t-shirt, and one of the guys was as well. We spent half an hour of that focus group talking about Star Wars. And someone seeing that from the outside may think, well, what, you wasted an hour of your time talking about Star Wars. But the rest of the focus group, they would tell me anything about their health. And that was only because we talked about Star Wars for that long, and we could make that connection. And because we were into the same thing, there's sort of a trust or a connection there. And he shared it was a piece of research about antipsychotic medications. So he would share all of his experience of these medications, and it's because we took that time to build that connection. So yeah, that relational, connectional, that's a new word now, aspect of life, or those kinds of tools are really useful.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's funny that you're reminding me of all these things as you're talking, because for every performance I ever do, I always start with my pepeha. And of course, Americans don't know what a pepeha is, but I will unapologetically talk about where I come from. And I recognize that, unfortunately, I've had living in the United States for the last 10 years now. I've also received a lot of backlash about, sharing so much about myself and creating that what I was trained to do, create an opportunity for connection and relationability it's paramount for what I've been doing as an educator for the past 20 years and as a coach for the past 10. I'm curious, because your work is predominantly based in Aotearoa, how do you hope that your thesis and the work you do, because I know you've spoken abroad, how do you hope that your work will manifest or impact other cultures in the way that they see connection or relatability, or our connection with the earth and ethnicity, etc.? Has that crossed your mind? Or
yeah, I don't know if this answers your question, but that first part that you said, the importance of relationships and connection, and something I've always thought about and I've shared quite a bit with this job, because it took me a while to get there, is this idea that like none of us chose to be here. Like, we choose to stay alive, but none of us, that was a decision that was made for us by other people. So it just makes sense that we help each other out and connect. Like, if we're all just trying to survive, like, it just makes so much more sense that we work together to get through whatever this experience is that we call life. Like, to stomp on other people just seems counter to what we are as people. So, given that we didn't have this choice, I mean, if you're with a whole group of people and no one had a choice to be wherever this place is, I mean, wouldn't you want to work together to get out or improve? Or, say you're locked in a room, wouldn't the group of you all be trying to work together to try and get out of this room? Like, so on a much bigger scale, doesn't it make sense in the world that we work together and form connections rather than climbing all over each other? Yeah. So that's one of the biggest things. If we're thinking about something that links together all the work I've done, both academically and professionally, that's probably one of those things that runs through it. And I think it's something that, no matter what country you're from, you can kind of connect with. And sadly, we're seeing at least in the media, we're seeing a lot of disconnect and people fighting with each other and this divisiveness and stuff like that. But there's also a lot of hope in people working together and looking out for your neighbor in that as well. And I think that's what we need to strengthen and keep talking about, and trying to improve things for those who, I'm very lucky that I was born into there's my disability, but other than that, I was born into quite a privileged position. But there are others who weren't so lucky, and that's pure luck. Like, that's not I mean, everyone's working hard, but that's pure luck. But I happen to be born into a country that I absolutely love. My parents are amazing. You know, we're financially comfortable. Well, comfortable these days is probably a debate, but you know, definitely not struggling as a lot of other people are. And you know, sure, there was a lot of hard work, but the starting point I started from was pure luck. And I think we need to realize that too, because then you kind of feel like we're all in the same boat as well, instead of this thing of, well, you need to work harder and you need to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. It's not my problem that you're this, that, or the other. You know, again, once we start thinking about this, well, we're all in this together because we all popped into this existence that we don't know the purpose of. You know, things become a lot more kind of cooperative and collaborative.
Yeah.
I have a question about just as you're talking, understanding human nature, your work and your research. What has taught you about human nature that has maybe surprised you the most?
Don't know whether I'd call it human nature, but I think just the unexpected ways people can act. So when I first started my bachelor's in psychology, one of the very first lessons I had, the guy said that psychology is used to predict human behavior. And I have since realized in all my work that I do not agree with that statement in the slightest.
Tell us why.
That's, I mean, if it wasn't for my everyday life kind of experiences and stuff like that, I mean, work in a prison and tell me that happens. Like, you know, the stuff that, you know, there was always a new story and a new, what the hell, how did that happen kind of thing going on. So I think that the unexpected, the hope in unexpected places, the being able to adapt. We talk at my work with for Health New Zealand, who, you know, the hospital and our health system here. You know, we talk about the strengths-based approach and some of the skills that people have when, you know, you would think that someone that's naked, experiencing psychosis, living in a park or something, a person would look at that and think, well, that person's hopeless. They got no, but they've survived for that long. And that shows that there's skills and there's strength and there's hope. And I think that's like, I'm a really good chess player. I never won a single game of chess against anyone in prison. Like, I'd go out into the yard once a week and listen to people play guitar and play chess and all that stuff. And I've never won a single game of chess. So all those kinds of skills and hope in these unexpected places is probably the coolest thing and the biggest surprise in how people can live in the toughest of environments and still have some sort of a life and still have skills and still have hopes and dreams and things like that. You know, I've had it tough during some times in my life, but wow, there's other people there, again, through no fault of their own, that are in the strangest of circumstances, but they still keep going. And that's not to, you know, for those who have passed, that's not to downplay their abilities or their experiences or their skills either, but just all the different range of places and experiences and characters that you encounter is probably, every time I think there's something I like to think of myself as someone who doesn't take a lot for granted, but every time with my job I find something, you know, the prison especially. Had a guy looking at, we used to have cameras and a laptop filming our sessions for supervision and make sure we're safe and stuff. And there was you could see yourself on the screen if you stood in front of it. And there was a young guy in the prison who was posing in front of the camera, and we just had a laugh about it. And I said, oh, well, you know, just making jokes and things like that. And he said, you know, I haven't seen my whole body in a mirror in a very, very, like, for years, because they're only given a small square.
Oh yeah.
And I was thinking, like, anytime, not that I do, but anytime I wanted to see myself, I can see myself now, like
Yeah.
on the screen or the mirror in the bathroom or any number of places. But he'd been in prison for 3 years with a mirror that square. So that's another thing that always surprises me about people, is just always teaching me things or realizing what I have and sometimes what I don't have. There's just so much. There's so much. And life is just so fascinating.
Yeah, I love that. It's, you talk about your history with Crohn's, and obviously I can relate with on the disability circuit with regards to my hydrocephalus. But as you're talking now, it just reminds me of that whole idea of, you've come this far in life because the decisions that we've made. And even if those decisions in retrospect might have not been the best decisions, they still protected us in the moment. We only do what we can in the moment with what we know and what we have access to. And so taking those tools and whatnot for granted, I think you're completely, obviously I agree with you. It's wonderful to be reminded that at any given time we have so much to be grateful for that we don't even realize, whether that's having grown up in South Auckland or Fairfield like myself, or living in Southeast DC, or whatever, insert perceived inopportune event here. There's still so much that we have to be grateful for. And I say that all to say we are obviously at our time cap, because that always happens with this podcast. But before we go, I would love to know if you could now, in February 2026, look back at who you were when you first started your journey in education and academics and really wanting to help people. If you could give yourself one piece of advice in retrospect, what would that advice be? And how can we find out more about you and stay in contact with, all the amazing work you do?
Oh God, what would I tell myself back then?
No pressure.
Yeah. Well, I think it's something I would tell anyone at any stage, really, and that's just survive as best you can. Try to have fun, and don't be so hard on yourself. I mean, that's probably the three biggest things. Survive, try and have fun, and just try not to be so hard on yourself when things don't go the way you'd hoped. And in terms of, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. I'm pretty open to talking to people. There's my email address that I think you guys have, that Dr. Dave one. Yeah, so if anyone's interested in any of it, if people are interested in my thesis, that's pretty easy to find. Dave Snell, New Zealand Bogans, and it'll probably come up. I will warn people, though, it is an academic piece of work. So even though I tried to make it as accessible as possible, some people are scared just by the abstract. So please don't let that put you off. My dad, when I first started writing stuff, the first question he'd always ask me is, "Does it have pictures?" And so I try to include pictures in everything I do, just to get back at Dad for his smart ass comment. So everything I have is pictures. So even if you just want to look at the pictures, that's right. A lot of heavy metal stuff in there. But yeah, I mean, my digital footprint's pretty big, so people can find me. And if people are interested in some of the media and stuff, I mean, I think I was in a TV show. I think that's on YouTube episodes now. I'm almost always connected, so people can pretty easily find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. And thank you to everybody who's been watching this episode. Of course, again, we will be linking all of the details in the comments or in the caption down here with how you can learn more about Dr. Dave and all his wide range of zones of genius, as I like to say. But until next week, friends, be good, be kind, spread love like it's going out of fashion. And Dinah, Take it home for us, darling.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
'Cause I am searching, don't need to look outside myself to know that I am whole. And I've been learning, made it through the darkest storms, and I'm coming to my own. And I am worthy of love. I can learn to love myself just because